Frank, a child genius, attends the New York World's Fair in 1964 to compete in the inventor's competition. Frank's prototype jetpack actually makes Judge Nix quite impressed, but when Frank admits the jetpack doesn't actually work well, Judge Nix quickly changes his mind. Even though Nix's assistant Athena likes Frank, Nix won't let him participate in the competition until the jetpack is functional. Frank departs heartbroken and cannot stop recalling all the occasions when his own father advised him that he was wasting his time. Athena suddenly approaches him and offers him a blue T-shaped orange lapel pin while requesting that he follow her and Nix covertly. The line for Nix and his group to ride a well-liked attraction is quite long, so Frank slips through the side and jumps into an empty boat. During the ride, a laser detects Frank's pin and activates a trapdoor that leads the boat down a dim passageway. Frank is excited to get inside the futuristic-looking wagon that appears, but as soon as he does, all doors and windows are covered in metal blinds, and the wagon starts to shake wildly. Frank trips and falls to the ground. He can't stand until the wagon comes to a complete stop. Frank steps outside as the doors open and finds himself on a platform covered in thick fog. He sees Athena and Nix inside a flying car as it passes, which surprises him. Giant robots suddenly appear in front of Frank as he attempts to pursue them and attempt to stop him. The child accidentally falls onto the platform below while running around the platform in an attempt to avoid the robotic arms, which breaks his jetpack. The jetpack is taken by a helpful robot who fixes it before returning it to Frank. When a group of guards arrive to arrest Frank at that precise moment, Frank steps away and falls again. However, this time he has his jetpack with him, so he puts it on and turns it on, finally being able to use it to fly because of the robot's repairs. Frank flies through the mist and finds himself in Tomorrowland, a futuristic metropolis populated only by the most intelligent people. Frank lands next to Athena when he sees her, and uses the opportunity to demonstrate to Nix how the jetpack has been fixed. Nix ignores him, but Athena takes his hand and demonstrates for him how his life will be going forward. In 2015, several years later, Casey, a young woman, sneaks into the NASA launch site in Florida to sabotage all the equipment that will be used for the demolition because she doesn't want her dad, a NASA engineer, to lose his job. When Casey gets back home, Athena uses a tiny scanner to collect Casey's DNA from her bike helmet and encodes it into her final Tomorrowland pin. Athena is observing everything from the shadows. Eddie, Casey's father, receives a call from work the following morning outlining the circumstance. Casey believes she has saved his job, but Eddie reveals that new cranes will be brought in, so Casey should really give up. But Casey reminds him that it's more crucial to maintain optimism. Casey tries to sabotage the demolition once more in the evening, but this time the police are waiting for her, and she is taken into custody. A few hours later, the bail is paid, and Casey picks up her belongings to head back home. In the midst of everything, she discovers a pin, and when she touches it, an unexpected vision of another location appears. When Casey touches the pin again, the same thing happens as the first time it falls. The second time, Casey correctly grasps the pin and finds herself gazing at a massive city in the distance. However, as she begins to move toward the city, the pin slips, and she finds herself back in jail because her movement caused her to bump into objects and other inmates in the room. Casey uses a gum wrapper to pick up the pin in order to prevent further trouble. Eddie pays the bail at that point and arrives to pick up Casey. He reprimands Casey for what she did on the way home, so she forces him to touch the pin, telling him it will explain everything. However, nothing happens when Eddie touches the pin. Confounded, Casey touches the pin and enters the alternate reality, concluding that this only functions for her. Eddie takes the pin away from Casey after growing weary of her babbling about it. When they get home, Casey waits for Eddie to nod off before stealing the pin from his night table. As soon as she touches it, she is transported to another world, and walking toward the city causes her to collide with her house's walls and even fall down the stairs. Eddie is awakened by the noise, prompting Casey to flee and decide to do this elsewhere. Casey walks to the center of a large field and touches the pin, allowing her to appear in Tomorrowland for the first time. While taking the train to get further into the city, she discovers that the pin has a timer and that no one can see her. When Casey gets off the train at the next stop, she notices some important scientists getting into a different type of wagon. She attempts to follow them, but water appears around her as the pin timer approaches 0. Casey tries to ignore it and pushes through the water, but Tomorrowland soon vanishes and Casey is in a swamp. Casey immediately wakes up her brother Nate and requests the password to their father's computer. The siblings look for the pin online and come across an advertisement for a store that buys these pins from anyone. Casey jots down the shop's address and asks Nate to inform their father that she will be camping with some friends. When Athena shows up at the house in the morning, Nate gives her the camping excuse. Athena detects his deception and relentlessly presses him until he finally confesses. Meanwhile, Casey follows the advertisement to the store. The eccentric clerks are clearly interested in it, and they confirm what Casey saw was true. Tomorrowland is a city where all the brightest minds have gathered to create freely without the constraints of government and greed, and the only way to get in is through the pin. When Casey refuses to cooperate, the clerks press a button that locks the door and reveals a pair of futuristic weapons that can shoot plasma. Casey tries to conceal herself among the merchandise, but the clerks discover her and demand information on some girl. A grenade blasts through the window, trapping the clerks inside a force field. An armed Athena also enters the shop and explains that it's a time bomb that won't last long before assisting Casey in getting her hand out of the field. Unfortunately, this causes the bomb to detonate, allowing the clerks to launch a counterattack. Casey throws merchandise at them as Athena fights them hand to hand, and when Athena removes one of their heads, Casey is shocked to discover both clerks were animatronics. Athena pulls Casey out of the store just in time to avoid the explosion after warning that the animatronics are about to explode. As she continues to explain that they must flee before they discover them, Athena breaks open a car window, pushes Casey inside, and then starts the vehicle with a special tool. When Casey starts to ask questions while driving, Athena responds by admitting that she was the one who gave her the pin. Before she can continue, she abruptly starts to malfunction, and Casey witnesses in horror as Athena fixes herself because she too is a robotic. Athena tries to follow Casey after she jumps out of the car because she is scared, but a truck hits her as soon as she steps onto the road. As soon as the driver notices something is amiss, Casey seizes the opportunity to flee by robbing the truck. Athena, however, is unharmed and dashes after the truck, bursting through the window to take the keys and lock the door. Athena finally stops Casey's yelling by telling her that she is her last pin and that they must leave right away for Tomorrowland because they constructed something that shouldn't have been there. When the police arrive at the destroyed store, they find a burned robot head. Before they can conduct further investigation, Dave, a member of the Secret Service, appears. Dave pulls out a futuristic weapon after spotting the robot head and kills all the police officers before turning to his friends and telling them they found the girl and that they should tell Nix. The girls are heading to New York in search of the only person who can get them back into Tomorrowland. Casey starts to inquire about the other recipients of pins, but Athena is unable to respond and stops talking. The following morning, Athena gets up and drives so Casey can get some rest. Casey is informed that the person they will be meeting is named Frank, and after Casey has gone to sleep, Athena amuses herself by thinking back on all the fun she used to have with her friend. Casey awakens hours later when she is abruptly pushed off the truck in front of a rural home. Casey has no choice but to approach the house because Athena is leaving in her car, but as she does so, a guard dog pursues her. The fact that the dog is a hologram and not a real dog prompts Casey to trip and fall in the mud. Casey approaches the door, ignores the fake beast, and asks to be taken to Tomorrowland while displaying her pin to the camera. As an older Frank exits the house and pushes Casey back, he demands to know where Athena is. Hearing that she is left enrages Frank, who tells Casey to leave because Tomorrowland is nothing more than a deceptive lie. Frank locks the door before going back inside his home. Despite it raining, Casey will not go inside and waits outside. She eventually becomes exhausted and scans the area to come up with a strategy. Casey forces Frank to leave the house by lighting the plowing truck on fire. While Frank is outside putting out the fire, Casey enters the house and locks the door. The second time Frank tries to enter, Casey simply pushes him away with the same airburst. As Casey starts exploring the house, he discovers all kinds of bizarre inventions. One particular machine plays a recording of young Frank attempting to make Athena laugh and Athena telling him to give up. She discovers a number of screens showing the news in another room, along with a timer that is gradually winding down. Frank returns to the house as a hidden door beneath the stairs opens, ready to throw Casey out, but she persuades him to give her some answers. Frank was banned from Tomorrowland for creating the timer that is connected to the screens, which is something that shouldn't have been built. He asks Casey if she would want to know the day of her death, and she replies that she would, but she wouldn't believe it because they need to be able to control their own destiny, and accepting her death might actually cause it. The percentage on the screen begins to decrease as a result of this statement, greatly impressing Frank. The sudden appearance of Dave and his agents, robots, searching for Casey interrupts their conversation. When one robot uses her strength to force her way inside despite Frank's immediate activation of all the metal blinds, Frank uses a tool to electrocute her. Another robot is destroyed by an electrical trap on the wall, and Frank eliminates two more by causing them to fall through a hidden trapdoor. Then Frank and Casey dash into the living room, where another robot awaits them. Casey helps Frank win by grabbing a special portal machine and inserting the robot inside. The pair makes their way upstairs, where more robots fall into various traps around the house, until Dave catches up with them and holds Frank at gunpoint. Fortunately, Casey discovers a bat and uses it to pummel Dave. Frank then dragged Casey into the bathroom, where they jumped into the bathtub after Frank had turned it into a capsule. One more robot pursues them and tries to grab the tub, but Frank launches it just then, sending the capsule flying out and landing on the lake. So Casey and he swim out to it. Frank has a bike hidden in the woods that won't start. The two are startled by an approaching light, but it is only Athena who is there to take them. The arguing between Frank and Athena starts as soon as the group gets in the truck and heads out. It turns out that all of the pins were intended to be destroyed, and Athena escaped with the final box of 12 pins so she could keep on recruiting. Frank is indignant that more youth have been drawn into this and informs Casey that Athena lied, claiming that she doesn't shut down if you ask too many questions. She simply ignores you. Frank believes that Athena presents false emotions in order to entice you and then leave you. Even though Athena is hurt, she ignores it for the time being in order to drive them to the local station, where Frank has set up his covert network that connects to his home. Another capsule awaits them, and once the humans are properly protected, they activate the system that teleports them away. Casey discovers they've arrived at the top of the Eiffel Tower. There's a guard near the door, but luckily Frank has a bag full of inventions, including a small tool that allows Casey to knock the guard out with a light tap. They walk into a room with an exhibition of famous inventors, and Frank explains that Eiffel, Verne, Tesla, and Edison founded Tomorrowland by using the Eiffel Tower as an antenna to transport them to another world. There's a hidden entrance about which there have always been rumors, and after looking around, Frank opens it. As more robots approach to capture them, this splits the Eiffel Tower in half, revealing a rocket, prompting the trio to flee inside. The robots are pushed away by the energy that the rocket releases during takeoff, and after flying up for a while, the robot returns, opening a portal as it falls at high speed. The group arrives in Tomorrowland moments later. Because the authorities witness their fall and are pursuing them, Frank instructs Athena to conceal a special bomb he brought with him inside her body. Nix, the city governor, is the first person to encounter them and wants to have them arrested. He quickly changes his mind after hearing from Frank and Athena that Casey has the ability to lower the percentage displayed on the screens. Shaken, Nix leads the group to the facility where the lethal tachyon machine that Frank created is kept. When they ride the elevator, Casey experiences holograms that are actually flashes of the future brought on by a device that uses a particle that travels much faster than light. Frank demonstrates how to operate the device to Casey as the group enters the machine's center, enabling her to view any period in human history. Casey is surprised to see herself in her house a few mornings ago, and Frank explains that the machine can also look forward, so Casey begins fast, forwarding through history until she finally notices the problem. The machine has predicted that the world will end in 58 days. Casey questions why they aren't warning people on Earth, And Nix explains that he doesn't care because it is the world, not Tomorrowland, that will end. And he won't let anyone in because they'll do the same thing to Tomorrowland as they did to Earth. Casey refuses to accept this, and her demeanor causes the screen to flicker briefly, revealing a better world. Frank tries to argue that this proves there is a chance, but Nix simply takes them all out. Later, when Frank awakens, Athena informs him that they will be deported once more. Casey is upset that the entire adventure has been for nothing, and when Frank tries to console her, she snaps and claims they have been lying to her. As she starts to rant, she suddenly has an insight. Frank has been stealing the machine signal to watch it at his house, and the signal is floating around Earth, zapping these doomsday notions into people's minds. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but if Casey's optimism can change it, turning it off will allow people to see the light once more. The guards arrive to remove the trio from Tomorrowland via a portal. Casey attempts to inform Nix of her discovery and requests that he turn off the machine, but Nix claims that there is no off button. His calm demeanor makes Frank realize the truth. Nix is deliberately implanting the idea in people's heads. Nix explains that, in the past, warning the government about the impending disaster was ignored, so he sent the idea directly into people's heads as a warning to get them to change their ways. But rather than attempting to create a better future, humanity accepted that the end of the world was inevitable. Nix believes that although the situation is unfortunate, it is humanity's fault. Frank shakes hands with Nix while acting as though he accepts this, but all he does is touch his bracelet and restart the machine platform. Athena and Casey take out the guards while Frank battles Nix, who sends 2 robots after the girls. Frank instructs Athena to use the bomb he gave her, but when she tries, the robots apprehend her. In the midst of her battle with the robots, Athena hands the bomb to Casey, who then rushes to the platform. It begins to move erratically due to the ongoing battle between Frank and Nix over the bracelet on the other side of the portal. One of the robots is taken under Athena's control, and she uses it to force the other one through the portal, causing it to attack Nix as well. By viewing a glimpse of the future, Casey is able to set off the bomb, but just as she is about to throw it, Nix regains control of the bracelet and pulls the platform down. Athena rushes to grab the platform with her robot and then dashes to the control panel to shut the portal, destroying the second robot and leaving Frank and Nix outside. Casey discovers the bomb just as it is about to detonate at that precise moment. Athena has no choice but to reopen the portal, and when the men return inside, they throw the bomb into the portal, letting it to explode away from them. Nix is captured when the portal breaks and falls on top of him. However, there is a gun nearby that he uses to murder Frank. When Athena sees Frank dying, she realizes it's a flash from the future and runs to put herself between Frank and the shot. Casey takes Nix's gun, and Frank tries to take Athena to a repair shop, but Athena asks him to stop because they don't have enough time. She needs Frank to know something very important before she dies, so she plays a series of recordings from their time together all those years ago. Little Frank had a crush on Athena, but he was disappointed when he discovered she was a machine. This bothered Athena, and she kept voice diaries detailing how Frank made her feel things robots shouldn't. Frank is relieved to hear that Athena liked him and never lost faith in him. So it's time for Athena to leave. Her body is about to explode, and she wants them to use the resulting explosion to stop the machine. Frank lifts Athena with a jetpack, and after they say their goodbyes, Athena is dropped inside the machine. The entire structure blows up, and the debris lands on Nix, killing him. Tomorrowland loses power, and Frank attempts to maintain control of the jetpack in order to land safely in the river. Casey rushes over to check on him, and as they discuss what to do next, a vision of flashes from the future give them an idea. First, Frank repairs the portal so that Casey can rejoin her family. Then they collaborate to restart the PIN program, for which they construct a slew of robots like Athena. These robots travel the world using a portal, leaving pins for bright minds who can help them create a better future for Earth.